I don't care where you stand on politics. Here's a question I would ask any nerd in the hobby, outside of political activists, people that are here for the game and that is their major aim. Is there anything wrong with representing in some way the negative side of the human condition that we find in the real world? Like the practice of slavery, or the prejudice of one group against another. Is it really bad to represent that in the world or in the game? No. It's only when we promote that thing through our intent as, say, game designers, somebody who's putting the game together. Did they put slavery in there because they're endorsing slavery? They're saying slavery is a good thing? Or are they putting it in there as a negative aspect of the world that the characters can fight back against, that evil people will take advantage of? And that causes the drama. That causes some of the conflict, which creates the adventure, which gives characters and people in the world purpose. Is there anything wrong in a hobby that demands your creativity where a black man wants to put a game together based on Japanese history and myth? Well, you might say, well, why isn't that an Asian guy doing that? Should we be okay with the black man making a game based on Japanese myth? Well, we should be. Anybody can create anything. It's how he goes about doing that. It's the context in which he represents that world. Is it being done out of hate, or because he wants to create something fantastical for players to play a game in? Well, if that's his only intent, and in the context of what he's doing, he's not, promoting something negative, then it's completely okay that that black man is making a game based on Japanese myth. When it comes to putting anything in these games, like monsters that might have a human intelligence, right? What are we going to do when we're creating them? We are people. There's going to be aspects of human beings, who we are, our condition, put into almost every monster that can think like humans, have a personality, have that level of intelligence. You could easily compare any of these things to the real world, like, say, orcs to black people. But is the intent in the creation of orcs to represent black people? Well, it's not. It's just to represent negative type of people. Monsters. People we might call monsters in the real world that are just people, negative people. And it won't matter what color their skin is. And to a degree, orcs, goblins, things like this, they represent the negative side of the human condition. If you try to compare that to one race, well, in all honesty, the person who's trying to compare them is racist. In a way, you're degrading an entire race. You're saying this group, this monster in the game that represents a negative aspect of the human condition, well, it represents black people. Well, nobody else is saying that other than the people that want to make an issue, a political issue, where they want to make it seem like black people are being victimized by a tabletop role-playing game with orcs, or a movie or book with orcs. Well, we know that's ridiculous, and we all know that's ridiculous, right? Look, orcs, goblins do represent something negative about humans, but it's about all humans, right? Just because we have different color skin doesn't mean we're really that different. Anything negative about black people is going to be negative about white people, negative about Asian people. And you'll find all this through every race. So at the end of the day, you could really compare orcs to anybody and get away with it. And what happens when you try to muzzle artists in this way? In this unrealistic way, with demands that make no sense, where they should have the freedom to explore these areas, even in tabletop role-playing games, as they try to put their creativity to what they're making. What really happens? Well, you destroy the content. You destroy the art. It becomes dead, right? It has no life. And you can feel the nothingness when you get these games. They're empty. They're meaningless. Like nowadays, when WotC puts something out, you might be able to steal one little thing from the book, but the entire book is pretty much useless to you. You feel nothing when you open it. They're generic at best. And it's because the people that are putting them out are walking on eggshells, right? They might even agree with the muzzle and the censorship of certain ideas. But either way, with that muzzle on, even if they're putting it on themselves, they're destroying everything that they're trying to sell to us, right? It doesn't work because we don't relate with that thing, because they're taking reality out of things and trying to make a delusional fantasy world on top of the fantasy world that they're trying to use that fantasy world to inspire. Like, no, we use the real world to inspire our fantasy because we relate with the real world. And when we relate with it, that gives something life, right? Because we feel it, we connect to it. When you take that stuff out, we stop connecting to it. When you take the real negative aspects out of the human condition, it doesn't seem real to us. There's no connection. The bad guy isn't so bad. He's boring, right? We want a world of conflict to create the drama, to create the adventure, to create the purpose. And what you're offering is no purpose at all. It's nothingness. Like, just let's all get along and patty cake and, have a bad guy who's really not that bad at the end of the day. To a degree where you're feeling awful about the way we treat demons, tieflings in the game. Oh, we don't like how they're being treated. That's racism. Come on, right? Look, we don't have to stand on the same side when it comes to politics. We can agree what is obviously racist, meaning the intent of the designer was to be racist. We can call that out. But if a game or a gaming world has slavery in it, but it's not being endorsed or promoted, well, that's not real hate or prejudice that we have to fight back against. In reality, I want that. Like, I want the negative side of the human condition represented in almost every world in some way. It doesn't have to be just slavery, but it can be anything. I'm not endorsing these things as good. I just want the conflict and the drama. So there's a purpose for the characters, something for them to get out there and fight back against, right? A hurdle in their way to achieve what they want to do. I want that, that conflict, that hate, that hurdle to all exist in the world. And it doesn't always have to be in the same way, and it doesn't always have to be direct prejudice. It doesn't have to be based on, like, your sex or your race. I just want the conflict to be there, and sometimes it's going to be represented through a form of hate, like, say, racism or sexism. It can exist. Look, as long as the game designer or the writer or the artist isn't endorsing these things, because I don't endorse these things, then I'm on board. I'll go play your Conan game with slavery in it, right? But if I feel somehow that really the whole game is about endorsing slavery and saying slavery was a good thing, and that you're representing, hate in the game, not just as a negative side of the human condition for us to deal with in the gaming world, but you want to push that on us. You want us to agree with you. You want to push us propaganda through your game. Well, then no, of course I'm against you. But at the same time, almost everyone I see accused of stuff like this, they're completely innocent. Go back to Gary Gygax and the people that made the old D&D games. Look, you can find slavery. You can find prejudice in the gaming world and hate in the gaming world. It doesn't mean it was promoted. You might even find nerds being realistic about things, the difference between men and women in the game. You might notice that if you go to make a female character, you're starting off with something less than a male character. And you might be like, oh, that's sexism. Well, is it really? In a nerd world like that is for the tabletop role-playing games, you think that's what caused it, was just hate on women? Or is it more likely that these are just serious nerds that were applying a level of realism to the game, and that was their only intent? And if that is their only intent, then they're not bad people. And we should be open-minded to whatever they're producing. Now, if you're going to make the accusation that they are bigots, you really need to prove it. Now, not just give me some vague idea of what could be bigotry, because when we look at it, it could be bigotry and it could be not bigotry at all. And in this hobby, given how nerds are and how they focus on details, 99.9.9.9% of the time that you say bigotry and you point to a certain thing, when you really dig down, you'll just find a nerd being a nerd, where there's no intent of bigotry in any way going on in what they're doing. They're just being overly realistic or something in that vein. And when you examine really, what they're doing and how they see it, it makes sense that that is what's really happening and not the bigotry. We don't have some extreme bigotry problem in the hobby. And I'm not trying to argue this from the right or from the left or from the center. I'm just trying to say to everyone, liberals, conservatives, libertarians, or anyone, even people that don't identify with politics in any way, we should all agree that this is okay. Look, there's always going to be a percentage of shit in this world that we're going to disagree on, like a 10% area where we're going to fight on, where we're going to go to our politics and vote on. But in reality, if we really examine outside of the small extreme groups in our societies, the majority agree on just about 90% of this shit. And I imagine most liberals that are not like the far left that are listening to me right now agree with me on just about probably everything I said in this video. As long as it's not truly promoting bigotry, well then fine. Just because you're representing hate and prejudice and bigotry in the art, in the story, or in the world, doesn't mean it's a promotion of it, and under those conditions, it's allowed. That's how we get Conan. That's how we get some amazing things. And there's no point in putting a muzzle on artists and killing the art, taking the life out of it, draining the life out of art in this useless, unnecessary way. And in reality, the people that are pushing us down in this direction are political activists that don't really care about the game. So if we really do give a shit about the game and the experience, we should not really outrageously push back on this stuff. Here's what I would say. Casually push back on it. Casually. And what I mean is, like for example, if they're trying to push propaganda through some new Star Wars and you're not into it, well then when you talk about Star Wars, talk about it as if it ended with what you like. And anyone brings up the new stuff, you just say, yeah, no, we don't acknowledge that stuff, we don't bother with that stuff, and you go right back. That is more impactful on the people around you to see you casually dismissing something, because to most people, casually dismissing something, is what most people do if it's easy to dismiss. So people relate that casual dismissal with, hey, that must not have any sway anymore, right? Because when they hear people bitching about stuff like content creators, well, they think, well, even if they're trying to dismiss it, it still has some sway, right? When you see people starting to casually dismiss these things, wow, that's impactful to the people that are paying attention. Anyway, for now, take care. You know what you can do? You can hit the like button. You can share the video. Oh, and there's another button you can press. That one that lets you subscribe to my channel for more content. Oh yeah, there's that bell thing. You can press that so you know when I've uploaded a new video right away.